Hey guys, we're back with the SoCal Skarmorys. The members of the SoCal Skarmorys we got here are Steve the Wizard and the Gouge. Say hello, guys.
Hey, I'm Steve.
And I'm Gouge.
All right, so we're gonna go through your draft real quick. So first overall, you guys went with the Crocodile. Then you guys went Lapras, the G-Max version, Gudra, Comfey, Lucario, Miltank, the Kanto Mr. Mime, the Unpheasant, Flareon, and Execute. So right off the bat, we gave your synergy a B. Now, while we didn't see the typical, Dragon, Steel, Fairy core that you might see a lot of times in Draft League, or you might not see the Fire, Water, Grass core on this team that you might typically see where you have a lot of defensive typing synergy, we do see one thing, and that is the Lapras, the Gudra, and the Comfey. You pair that with the Miltank, you pair that with stuff like Crocodile too, where you can start self-procking your weakness policy with Giga Drain and things like that. You have a lot of really, really powerful things that synergize together, particularly the Lapras Gudra Comfey. It's a great core just in general.
With Mr. Mime as well.
With Mr. Mime as well, yes. So, even though you might not have those typical, like, I don't want to call them cliches, but staples, I guess, more of cores that you might see in a lot of drafts, there's no doubt that there's good synergy here. So, while you may not have those classic things, we gave you a B. You're going to be able to do a lot of things with this core, particularly, being able to set up weakness policy stuff, anger point stuff with the Crocodile, just be able to get outbulk your opponent because Gudra and Lapras have that ability, and just Comfey going into him, it's going to make it very, very difficult to not only like stop your offense, but also break through the walls of defense that you guys have. So because of that, we gave you a B.
When it comes to threat level, we knocked you guys down to C+. You guys do have a few pretty clear threats here, but it's not quite as threatening as a lot of the other drafts that we saw. G-Max Lapras is very, very obviously threatening, especially if you run it with like a light clay and you're going for more of a defensive kind of game, or you run a weakness policy on it. You can proc your weakness policy with the Comfey. It's definitely pretty dangerous. Gudra is sort of kind of the same thing, just obviously doesn't have that G-Max resonance. It's very bulky. It's very hard to take down, especially if you Dynamax it. Again, it's another Pokemon that you can proc the weakness policy on with Comfey. And Comfey really makes those two mons extra threatening, more so than they are just on their own, especially because if you go for a self-proc weakness policy on one of them, with the Comfey, it'll get around opposing Follow Me, because Triage is +3 priority, Follow Me is +2. You also have some fairly threatening redirection. Lucario is a very powerful Pokemon. It's not as good at redirection as a lot of other mons because it is kind of frail, but it can obviously do other stuff as well. It's great as an offensive Pokemon. It has Inner Focus, so it's immune to Intimidate. It has Justified, so I don't know if Crocodile actually does get beat up, so you could actually do some beat up Justified stuff there. Mr. Mime, I think personally is one of the most valuable Follow Me users for the amount that you spend on it.
Mm-hmm.
Its physical defense is pretty pitiful with its low HP stat, but it's surprisingly bulky when you invest defense when you invest in HP and defense, especially with the filter ability. It's actually kind of funny if you put a type resist berry, a super effective type resist berry on it with filter, it'll actually take less damage from that particular type than it would from a neutral hit. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, Follow Me, Fake Out, Wide Guard, and then you got stuff like Icy Wind and Helping Hand all in the same Pokemon. It can even set up Trick Room. It has a lot of versatility. It's a really, really great support mon. I think it's a steal in B tier. I was surprised to find that it was even still available around 7. But then there's a few other things that I find maybe a little bit questionable on threat level. I think that despite despite the threats that can exist on your team, I think some others may fall flat. I'm not too confident in the Miltank's ability to really threaten an opposing team. Unpheasant it sort of just ends up being like a budget crit kiss, which could end up being powerful, but it's also a bit of a gamble. And it's also, there's not a whole lot else that it can do on its own. And then some of your other threats, like there's also the Anger Point Crocodile that could end up being a threat as well. But I feel that some threats, especially like Goudra and especially the Lapras, if they don't have the opportunity to Dynamax, I feel that they may be kind of underwhelming. And I say especially Lapras because non-Gmax Lapras is in B tier for a very good reason. The Gmax, the Resonance, is really, really what bumps it up. It's probably the best Gmax move in the game. Yeah, I'm definitely concerned that some of these might not be as threatening if another Pokemon is the one that ends up Dynamaxing, and of course you can only Dynamax one per game. So I'd be kind of concerned about that. For your overall draft grade, we gave you guys a B minus. We really liked we really liked picks 2 through 5 altogether, especially one right after the other. The Lapras, Goudra, Comfey core is really great, and then to round out that Dragon Fairy Steel core with the Goudra and Comfey, you picked up Lucario right after that. My only issue with that is that you guys waited kind of a long time to pick up a Follow Me user, which surprisingly didn't end up hurting you because you got both Lucario and Mr. Mime. I think drafting those two in rounds 5 and 7 is a little too risky for my taste. I'm surprised that you guys got 2 decent Follow Me users without drafting them earlier. I also think, and in the same vein, I think drafting Mr. Mime at least 1 round earlier would have been a much better idea, because so many Follow Me and Rage Powder users got snatched up really quick. The other major issue that we had with your draft order was the fact that you guys picked up Crocodile first. We do like Crocodile as a Pokemon. It has a special place in my heart. I used it all through 2017. I do think it's a really great Pokemon. As a first pick, we are very skeptical of it. So that's something we will talk about later. But we felt like, especially with the direction you guys went in your draft after you picked it, we were not confident that Crocodile really, really worked and synergized with a lot of the stuff that came after it. It just feels a little bit out of place, and we think you could have gone for something maybe like an Incineroar in that first slot, considering that Incineroar is now A tier this season. So you guys did have some solid picks, but there were a few issues that we found with the order of your draft.
So for your overall team grade, though, we ended up giving you a B minus. This was really tough for us because we actually did kind of want to see if we can put you guys into that B or B plus range. But the problem was that outside of the Lapras, the Goudra, the Comfey stuff, which like Matt kind of touched on, was the problem is that you can only Dynamax one of those, and the other one's going to be a little bit underwhelming while it's tagging along. While we like the core a lot, it looked very, I don't want to say easy to prep for, but if you prep for one thing, then it's like, well, if they bring Miltank against us, then at least we just have to deal with Miltank. And now, we could be eating those words in a little bit, and the rest of the league could be eating those words, but it's still something to consider when you look at the overall threat level of, some of the Pokemon that you have, especially considering that, a decent amount of your Pokemon do depend on self-procking things, or kind of going into them to start getting the offense rolling a little bit. But with all that being said, we like a lot of these picks as individuals, I guess to say. Like, if we were to go through, we like all these Mons. we're not totally sure how they're going to fit together, and this is where obviously the player profile comes into effect, because just because we're not going to draft those mons or we don't value those Pokemon as highly doesn't mean that you guys don't. That doesn't mean that you guys don't see what the potential of this team are. As a matter of fact, I'm very confident that you guys would have the potential, but because of the way that you guys didn't have a cohesive fire, water, grass core that maybe would have been good for to defensively plan for teams, or a real I don't want to say steel type, but Lucario is it's gonna be very weird how you bring him compared to some of the other steel types that might be around, and really the problem with the dragon steel fairy core is the fairy type. There's really not a lot of fairy type, because the Mr. Mime is going to be kind of doing one thing or another. The Comfey is not really putting out any offensive pressure, so it's more the fairy type that. So because of the combination of not having that synergy that typically you want to see in draft, we did give you a little bit of a low overall team grade. But I feel that this is one of those teams where, even though on paper it doesn't look good, it's one of the teams that is probably going to do better than what we're expecting out of it. So just to go into it real quick, on the pros, we think that the G-Max Lapras, the Comfey, and Goodra core, really strong. We think that it was a good pick. It was a good way that you guys came out with it. We're not sure if it's going to be able to consistently put out the offense that you guys want, considering that you do have to kind of self-proc things, or do weird shenanigans activate Sap Sipper in other weird ways, and trying to go around the fake outs and stuff like that. But we think the core itself is really strong. It's a great defensive core, and there's enough offense to where if you really, really play your cards right, teams won't be able to break through you. You'll win games where you only lose one mon, and maybe you take away 3, and you guys win 5-3, 5-2, because you guys just took them to timer, and you guys have such a strong defensive core that it's hard to even take one off of you guys, especially when you consider stuff like Mr. Mime and things like that. And then good type synergy with the redirectors, as I was saying, with Mr. Mime and with Lucario, being able to take things that are normally super effective on things like Goodra, and then a dragon type move into Goodra and being able to redirect it into Mr. Mime. That's really, really, really important. Being able to take fight bug types attack from Crocodile and being able to redirect those into Lucario, that's really important too. All these things are important things that you should be able to that come into play when you're synergizing your redirectors with some of the more offensive threats that you guys have and some of the more core Pokemon that you guys have. And the last thing that we want to talk about in the pros was the strong support options that you have overall. Miltank gets a decent amount of support option. Obviously, we talked about Mr. Mime already. Goodra is a Swiss Army knife when it comes to a lot of these things, because not only does it get the stuff that of, like Floral Healing and Giga Drain, but it also gets
Comfey.
Comfey. It gets Trick Room, things like Trick Room that a lot of people aren't expecting for whatever reason. It's always gotten it, but for whatever reason, people don't expect it. So you have a decent way to turn things on its head, to turn the speed on its head, and be able to really do damage with Lapras and stuff like that.
As for the cons, we noticed that a lot of your sweeping potential seems to come from self-hitting strategies, whether that is beat up justified stuff with Crocodile Lucario, self-activation on the weakness policy with Comfey either next to the G-Max Lapras or a Dynamax Goodra, Comfey's Giga Drain into either Sap Sip or Miltank, or Sap Sip or Physical Goodra. You can do you could Crocodile has Anger Point. You could do some kind of critical hit shenanigans into a Dynamax Crocodile. There's a lot of your sweeping potential sort of relies on that, and in a format where in a Dynamax format, redirection is so huge. Most teams do have some kind of a redirector, even if it's just a Rage Powder user, which you can get around if you just put safety goggles on your Crocodile while you're beating up your Lucario or something like that. There are ways to get around it, but those kinds of strategies may be less it might be less viable to rely on that for your sweeping potential. Although, like I mentioned, you're not just 100% weak to follow me just because that's something that it looks like you want to do because of Comfey's triage and the fact that its priority is higher than follow me. So that does work out pretty well. But and it's perfectly conceivable that that maybe you're not always going to be going for self-hitting strategies. I can see this team doing other things, like I mentioned, slap a light clay on that Lapras and go for maybe more of a defensive play style 1 week here and 1 week there. But like I said, as far as sweeping potential goes, I feel it might be hard for you guys to really sweep through teams without relying on those kind of self-hitting strategies. I went over Crocodile a little bit. We're pretty skeptical of Crocodile as a first pick, especially given the picks that followed it. Just to reiterate, it can do some good stuff. I think Intimidate support for Goodra especially is really nice because its special defense is so big already. But it doesn't feel like it has the best synergy with the kind of draft that you went with afterward. Your first pick, this goes for any team really. Your first pick is going to be a really important really important factor in where your team goes, and it kind of Crocodile seems like an underwhelming Pokemon to pick first. It seems like something that would probably still be hanging around in A tier a few rounds later, and it also it kind of seems like you took a step to the left with Crocodile, and then you went into this other core and took a few steps right. And we do really like the combination of Lapras, Goodra, Comfey, Lucario, Mr. Mime. We think that's really strong. We're just not 100% clear on where Crocodile fits in and why you picked it so early, so that's something we'll talk about as well. And also, like I mentioned during when I was talking about your threat level, our last con here is that some of these Pokemon may sort of underperform if they don't get the chance to Dynamax. It kind of feels like you're going to end up maxing Lapras in most of your games. I think that's probably true of any team that picks Gmax Lapras and spends those S tier points on it. You're gonna want to get as much out of that as you can because you spent so much. You spent so many points on it. But I feel like some other stuff might underperform a little bit when Lapras is the one maxing, even though it can support really the whole team with Gmax Resonance. But if anything else wants to max, it's going to be especially difficult for Lapras to get going. I think it may really underperform. Like I said, it was the non-Gmax version is in B tier for a reason. So if you're not maxing the Lapras, you're kind of sort of using a B tier Pokemon, and you've essentially spent S tier points on. So that's I'm curious to see how you guys make that work, and curious to see how often you do or do not max the Lapras, what else it can do if it doesn't max. Sort of concerned a little bit about some of these Pokemon underperforming if they don't max Lapras in particular.
So that's basically our report card right there. Now we're going to go into some questions that we have for you guys that you guys can answer, that maybe we had questions on this draft, and then you guys can give us some clarity and maybe a little bit of insight on why you guys chose the picks that you did. So the first question here, we've obviously touched on it a couple times already, is we wanted to ask what the thought process was going into Crocodile. And before I kind of give it to you guys, I just kind of wanted to throw some stuff out. We thought that as much as we liked the Gmax Lapras, Goodra, Comfey core, that there were a few different things that you could have put in that slot that might have been able to help the synergy of the team overall be a little bit better, I guess, for lack of a better word. But we thought that Incineroar in that slot could have done pretty good. It gives you an Intimidate user. It gives you a good fire type that you can put next to Goodra. Gives you Fake Out. It has nice speed. You have the ability to parting shot in and out, making your bulk more powerful. One of the other things we thought was Kanto Raichu has the access for Follow Me, has the Lightning Rod to support the Lapras, has things like Nuzzle with its speed, can drop things down, give you a decent amount of speed control without having to be over-reliant on the Trick Room. And then another one is Arcanine, something that's a little bit faster as well, that can start throwing out Snarls and things like that, and really has a lot of different things that it could do. And then, speaking of a little bit higher points too, obviously this changes the dynamic of the draft because you're going from an A tier to an S tier, but Rillaboom would have also been very good in that slot as well. Having the grass type match up with the Lapras, taking a Rillaboom off the board we think could have been really important. And making sure that there's only one left and you don't have to worry about it too much. But having the Fake Out there, having the terrain control there, could have been really important. Obviously, the last couple they're weird spots because it kind of changes the entire dynamic of the draft when you take an S tier over an A tier, especially in the first round like that, and then you start going, you have another S tier in Lapras after. But those were some of the thoughts that we had on it. So going back to the question. What was the thought process in general for drafting Goodra as your first overall pick?
Crocodile.
Or Crocodile. Thank you. Sorry.
Well, there's a lot of reasons. So this is actually for both of us. It's our first draft we've ever done, and so we wanted to For me, I think one of the really fun aspects about draft that's unique to it as a format is diversity, right? So you can take one Pokemon and you can build it a different way every week. And that's what I think makes Crocodile such an interesting pick, because it has Moxie, Anger Point, and Intimidate, and all three of those abilities are really, really good and function very, very differently. And so I think that can be hard for somebody to prep for, because it's they might prep for us bringing a Moxie Crocodile, right? Like an offense Choice Scarf one or something like that, and bring a defensive Intimidate, and I'm whoa, wait, I wasn't expecting that, or vice versa. As well as Crocodile is just a really cool Pokemon.
Crocodile, I think speak for both of us here when I say that Crocodile is one of both of our favorite Pokemons.
Okay.
We both love Crocodile very deeply, and because it's so dynamic and it has so many different ways you can build it, we would kind of be building our team around Crocodile every week. Even though we have a separate core in Lapras, Goodra, Comfey, we knew we sort of have Crocodile be sort of the cornerstone of most of our teams. So we wanted to make sure that we had it so that we could fill out the draft in regards to that.
Very fair. That's very fair. Do you want to ask me?
Sure, yeah. Crocodile is a world champion, by the way, so don't sleep on Crocodile. Won Worlds 2017. Let's see.
117 attack ain't nothing to sleep on.
We also we touched on Miltank a little bit while we were going over your report card. We were kind of just curious about that pick, especially picking it before something so valuable like Mr. Mime. The only thing, initially looking at your report card, the only thing that I'm really seeing that Miltank can do is going to be something like a Triage Giga Drain into Miltank Sap Sipper. It does also get Scrappy. We all know Scrappy's a great ability. But what was your thought process behind the Miltank? What are you guys planning on doing with it?
So first, I want to talk about Miltank. That, yeah, it's a good support Pokemon, as well as it was another one of those mons that I was like, this is a mon that I would really use in a competitive context. But I think it would be really cool for this draft lead, specifically for the way that our team's designed, both with Giga Drain Comfey. But also, if we look at the other teams, we have Rillaboom, we have G-Max Rillaboom. All G-Max Rillaboom can ignore Sap Sipper. We have G-Max Venusaur, we have Amoonguss, we have Foongus. There's a lot of grass types in this draft. Just the fact that it's completely immune to Spore, the fact that it's completely immune to G-Max Venusaur, anything you'd want to go for, and it has support moves. It has Charm, which we can use on Rillaboom. It's got Thunder Wave, it's got and it has like things like body press. Scrappy body press can hit like Aegis Slash and stuff like that. You've got like a lot of different kind of ways that it can, and it gets good coverage, and it also in itself is not a bad Mon Dynamax because it has a solid HP stat, good defensive stats, and 100 base speed for a Pokemon that is this supportive.
Yeah.
Really in just like both in the speed tiers of how the rest of our Mons work, and then also that it outspeeds a lot of the like kind of bulkier, not like super fast hard hitters, but hard hitting Mons that maybe have like 85 to 90 base speed.
Not to mention, it also has like over 100 defense and like a pretty decent special defense stat on top of that. Like, not only is it in the 100 speed tier, but it also has a really nice amount of like HP, like you said, and just general overall bulk. And don't forget the Whitney special of defense curl rollout, and that key portion of the strategy that
don't sleep is what we're trying to say.
Yeah. We feel like Miltank is definitely underrated after we took a good look at her.
I know you guys are going to be recording all of your matches, so if I don't see Defense Curl roll out at least once in this league, I'm going to be very disappointed. Especially after you said that, so
Okay.
I'm holding you to
We'll
that.
keep that in mind.
They're gonna 6-0 sweep every team. You can't have that.
I hope so.
Their differential is gonna be out of control.
If they 6-0 sweep every team with rollout Miltank, I'm at peace with that.
Well, so
We will be too.
so the next Pokemon that we kind of wanted to talk about was the Unpheasant. Unpheasant, as Matt kind of touched on a little bit, can kind of be of a budget crit kiss. Has a okay speed stat, pretty fast in general compared to a lot of the stuff that's in this draft in general. But what was your thought process of going for Unpheasant in the 8th?
So, Unpheasant is definitely, like, it's one of those Mons that I think is just in general kind of forgettable. And when we were looking at it, we were like, okay, this Mon's actually, it has a pretty good attack stat at 115. It's got a solid speed stat at 92. It's got quick attack for priority. I mean, it has Night Slash for guaranteed crits with the scope lens, Super Luck set. And it also has Tailwind support. It's got U-turn to switch out. And so it has pretty good, like, it can be kind of a faster offensive, like maybe it could just be like a revenge killer that we need, or it could just be, or it could be like a supportive kind of Tailwind user and stuff. Of course, its bulk is questionable,
Not so great, but,
to say the least. But yeah, I think it was just kind of a good kind of round out flying type to support, especially like when we want to go for like faster gameplay and stuff.
And we also knew that like we kind of want something similar to like a Crit Kiss kind of thing to sort of help round out our team, but we knew we would never in a million years ever get our hands on Togekiss, so we were like, okay, what's the next best thing? And we sort of landed on.
Hey, getting that in the 8th round, that's a pretty good value there, considering the Togekiss went so high. First overall.
Yeah,
Exactly.
We did not expect to even have a chance at Togekiss.
Yeah. And we knew Unpheasant would not get picked up otherwise, probably. So we were confident leaving it till later in the draft.
Very
And of course,
smart.
getting like Mr. Mime as a fair redirect user is a solid,
Mhm.
is a solid second option. And plus, with filter and then with things like screens and stuff like that, I feel like it's overall better benefits just like the bulkiness that goes into our team as well. So it's kind of having both those mons fills that role.
Yeah.
Overall, better for.
All right, so that brings us to you guys. We're going to throw it to you guys now that you guys heard all of our critiques and analysis, unless you had another question.
No, I think we're good.
No, I think we're good, yeah. So was there anything that you guys had for us or specifically wanted to address about the way that we critiqued your draft?
I think that for the most part, like I get what you guys were saying, definitely, but I think that one thing that's that is really interesting about our team that I don't think a lot of people see is that like there are so many different ways that we can build these ones.
Yeah.
Like I mean, you see Crocodile, Lucario next to each other. Is it going to be beat up, justified? Is it going to be weakness policy? This is it going to be intimidate? This like how do it can be really hard to know how to prep when like our mons are really they're not as one dimensional as one might think. Like both they could run a supportive role or an offensive role, and so I think that's a really interesting thing. And another thing too is I think the last kind of latter half of our draft, like especially the last 2 picks, were kind of a little left to be desired, and might be something we'll look into trading maybe in the future, because that's kind of where we got sniped more than the beginning. Because I think we went for a really different general core than what most people were expecting. But I'm excited because, like I said, there's not. I don't see myself using mons like Miltank or even Mr. Mime or Unpheasant very much in VGC, so to be able to use them in this draft league is going to be a pretty fun and exciting experience.
It's funny that y'all like Mr. Mime so much, because we kind of arrived at Mr. Mime very late into the drafting process. Like, we were originally going to put Skarmory in that slot just because we're the SoCal Skarmorys. But then Steve turned to me and is like, "No, we need another follow me user." I'm like,
the more I looked at Mr. Mime, the more I'm like, he would actually be really amazing. So,
but sort of to speak to your critique, like, I believe you guys have a lot of solid critiques in that, like, we do have a very heavy reliance on self-procking strategies, and I sort of wanted to touch on something you mentioned of, like, our team would be easy to prep for, but, like, sort of touching on what Steve said as well, like, it's easy to prep for certain strategies that our team would revolve around. But, like, if you prep for that one thing and we end up going in a different direction, you would be, like, sort of caught flat-footed. And that's sort of something we're looking to exploit a little bit, especially with this team and how much variety we have in this. Like, we have some pretty wacky sets in store, like for Lapras and Unpheasant and even Lucario, I think, and Miltank. We have some really crazy stuff we can pull out whenever we want to. So it really kind of depends on when we're preparing each week. We're kind of gonna need to think, what is our opponent expecting us to bring, and how do we counter that kind of thing. So we're playing mind games element with our team very, very heavily.
Well, let me just go ahead and say too that for you guys' first time drafting, because you guys kind of came in the middle last year, you guys showed that you were more than competent. You guys showed that you could take a team that you guys didn't necessarily draft, tweak it around a little bit to where you can suit it a little bit more towards your play style, and pump out those wins. So I think that's the most important thing, and that's something that me and Matt also have in our draft, is we have a lot of versatility, and that is so strong, and that's something that's very hard to grade. It's very hard to grade how good that versatility can actually be practically, rather than like on paper. And it's something that can be very difficult, but you're absolutely correct. You guys have a ton of versatility. You guys have a lot of Swiss Army type Pokemon that go through 4 move slot syndrome. And Matt's kind of said this in one of our other analyses.
Gudra has coverage for everything. Gudra literally has coverage for everything.
Yes, exactly. And Matt said this before in one of our another analysis. I believe it might have been with Doesn't Click. But he said that it benefits a lot to have these Pokemon that have 4 move slot syndrome, because in a draft league, you don't really have that so much, because you're not trying to cover for an entire metagame. You're just trying to cover for 10 Pokemon. And it becomes a lot easier to choose those moves.
Exactly.
So yeah, we definitely like the versatility that you guys have on this. We think with creative and strong players like you guys are going to do very well with it. And honestly, we expect you guys to try and make a strong playoff push. This league is very, very heavy this year with good players. So it's going to be interesting, because a lot of teams actually are around. Having one draft was very difficult this year. We saw a lot of middling teams. We had a lot of top heavy teams last year where they were just great drafts in general, and a lot of the stuff has spread out a little bit, and everybody kind of ended up in like that B rank category, because it was so hard to fill in everything you wanted. So
and that was one of the things where I was like, okay, there's a lot of people in this draft, and I was like, let's do something really unorthodox. That's really the only way that we're going to get what we want, is if we want something nobody else wants.
Exactly. Like, I felt really lucky to nab Gmax Lapras. I figured that mon would go round 1 easy.
Pretty fast, yeah.
Like, I'm amazed that we were able to get that.
Because it was in both leagues last season.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was also A tier last season, I believe.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah. It's interesting that you were thinking that way, Gouge, because I kind of had the opposite Gouge. Sorry, I kind of had the opposite impression of Gmax Lapras. I kind of figured, and I sort of touched on this when we were going over your report card, but because it's something that you sometimes might be pigeonholed into Dynamaxing because you end up with a B tier Mon on your team instead if you don't max it. I felt like a lot of people would be hesitant to spend that amount of points on it. So I typically in a draft, like I was not surprised to find that it was still there in round 2. I think I would not have been surprised if nobody drafted Gmax Lapras, to be honest with you. So it's interesting that you had kind of the opposite perspective.
And I think because you guys supported it so well before, you guys touched on that too. Like, you guys picked it up knowing how your next couple of picks were going to be, which I think really cemented how good it looks. Because that's the thing too, is a lot of teams that are going to draft it automatically have to go, okay, well, our next couple picks have to go to this. Whereas at least like what you said with Crocodile was you guys picked it up and you weren't over reliant on the next couple of slots that you guys had to put next to it. Understand? But
Exactly.
yeah, honestly, overall, we like the team. We think you guys are going to do pretty well with it.
It looks like a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. So, you guys,
that was another point too. We want to have fun. That's the most important
exactly,
part.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Also,
Sorry, go ahead.
a lot of these picks were also informed by like, what Pokemon do we like? Like, I've never used Goodra.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I love the idea of Comfy ever since I've known it existed.
And it's like, this is Comfy's like best format.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And when are we going to use Unpheasant or Miltank ever again? Kind of thing. Flareon. Who uses Flareon? Like, it's about having fun for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It does look really, really fun. A lot of Pokemon that you wouldn't necessarily use in in VGC, like Mr. Mime as well.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing you guys succeed with some of the strategies that maybe we didn't identify in this analysis as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we've got some stuff up our sleeve that people won't see coming, and I'm excited to pull those out.
I hope so.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. We very much appreciate it. Good luck coming up in this year. It was great. This was fantastic, guys, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
And thanks for having us.
No problem. And actually, I
Good luck to
believe
everybody.
after this, we are talking to the Sadistic Seniors. So stick around for that.